Guess I asked the old question. Can you hear me in the back? No. No? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much. My name is Steve Schumacher. I am the Mayor's Office official historian. For a guy like me with my veteran status, I call it MOOH. It makes it easier to remember. M-O-O-H. So I was asked a couple days ago if I could stand up here to kick this off and talk about why are we even here, Steve? Why March? Why not November? Why not January? And to provide a little bit of context, as most of us historians know, somewhere in the neighborhood of, well, numerous centuries ago, the Huhugam were here, and at one point during their peak, there was estimated to be in the neighborhood of 50,000 people living here in the valley. Now, in addition to that number of people living here, archaeologists have documented that they dug over 500 miles of canals in the valley as well. So those are the original pioneers of the valley and the original pioneers of the Phoenix area. Unfortunately, for a number of centuries following that period, the canals and the ditches and the valley, pretty much in terms of Euro-Americans, there were none here. And then in the late 1860s, some came from Wickenburg, and they identified the canals that the Huhugam had dug numerous centuries before. And being the farmer capitalists that they were, they thought, well, if we can put some adaptive reuse to a couple of these canals, we can get some water flowing from the Salt River, grow some crops, sell them to the Fort McDowell and the miners in Wickenburg, and make some money. And so that's what they did. And so again, why March? March is the month that those Euro-Americans found one of the early Huhugam canals and reused it. And on March 12th exactly, 2 days from now, the first shovelful of dirt opened that first canal to water coming in from the Salt River, and the rest of it is history. So that's why March is important. That's why we're celebrating today, not just because of that shovelful of dirt that happened, but because of the origins of the Huhugam and the Euro-Americans that came after. So it's a dual celebration for those reasons today. Without our distinguished Mayor Gallego, none of this would be happening, believe me. With her vision and her help and her guidance, we're able to take some time out and celebrate our history and do a lot of things to celebrate it as we move forward. So with that, I would like to take a minute, introduce our distinguished mayor, and welcome her to this gathering this morning. Mayor Gallego, please.
Good morning. I'm Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego, and I'm excited to celebrate Phoenix History Month with all of you. Thank you to Steve for serving as our first Mayor's Office official historian. We believe that the more people know about our history, the better, and that we will make better decisions if we understand how we came here to be. So it's my goal as mayor to talk about our history more often, to learn more about our history, and to celebrate some of our great milestones. I want to thank you for all the work you have done for our city and continue to do. We're joined today by several distinguished speakers. We'll have Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community Vice President Leonard, who will speak to us. We're going to talk about our historic buildings, and I want to thank Aaron for joining us for that portion, and Professor Thibault for also providing important context to today's discussion. We have a rich history. I'll start my remarks today about the same period where Steve did nearly 1,000 years ago, where the Huhugam were really ahead of their time. Their work was engineering marvels to create this incredible system at the turn of the millennium. Around 600 years after they began that work, the population grew too large for sustainable living. So like true problem solvers, they began to construct canals for irrigation. Using, we think, digging sticks, they excavated 12-foot deep canals, fanning into a larger network of smaller canals. They successfully got water to flow for 700 miles over flat desert landscape. They've navigated hills and valleys. It's pretty remarkable. Though no one knows the exact reason the Hohokam left, it may have been because of outgrowing their capacity to sustain life in the desert, especially during prolonged periods of drought. The term Hohokam is said to be Pima for those who vanished, but I want to make it clear that history has not vanished. In the centuries that followed the Hohokam, new arrivals to Phoenix created the economic opportunity. It's roots that give us the name of our city, rising from that important infrastructure investment. The newcomers absolutely realized the feats of those who came before them and continued to invest using that infrastructure. That led to the eventual creation, among other developments, of what we now know today as the Salt River Project and the Salt River Water Users Association. Our city's Euro-American history begins with people working together in partnership, collectively, to address a very difficult challenge. It gives some of the spirit that we have here today, where we come together and say, to sustain life in the desert requires cooperation. As someone in local government who believes that we're better off when we collaborate, I love that our city's roots include that part of our story. Today we are thriving because our past is ever present. We continue to build upon the first Phoenicians' legacy of innovation during tough times. That's really one of our great values as a city. Our history is still being written every day, and some pieces are repeating themselves, including combating a historic drought among economic development and changing conditions in our region. The most recent period of our city's history makes us a relatively young city compared to other U.S. and global cities, but we stand upon a rich and long foundation. I know that there's so much more that we will accomplish, but to better understand how things came to be, we need to reflect on that past, and that is why I am excited to pronounce March officially Phoenix History Month. Throughout the month, city departments, including our Planning and Development Department, will be putting out educational videos and talking about our roots. This will lead into a November election where voters will decide whether to put $5 million into historic preservation. I hope Phoenicians will contribute along and help Steve tell the history of our story, of our city. If you have information we ought to highlight, we want to know about it. So I'll ask Steve to come forward and accept the proclamation.
Thank you so much.
And do I introduce the Vice President?
No, I can do that if you like. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate those great words. One of the things I forgot to do, and I'll do it at this point, is I want to say a special thank you to Ariel, Stephanie, who's no longer part of the team, but is still in the building somewhere, Angie, Catherine, Nicole, Lindsay, and Lorraine. Thank you for all your help in developing the proclamation and just the continuing support. So thank you for that. I'm especially delighted to introduce our next speaker. It is an absolute honor, and it's very inspiring for me at this point to introduce the Vice President of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, Ricardo Leonard. So, thank you.
First of all, thank you for the invitation to be here. And it's always good to see you again, Mayor. I know we did the last Our last meeting was Skype, and throughout that time. But I want to say thank you for recognizing our people that have gone and pronouncing the right way of Hu'ugam. Hu'ugam means there's no more. So I'd like to start with a good morning. First, from our autumn side is Gukdash, and the other side of the Maricopas is Kamdum. Thank you, Mayor Gallego, for the invitation to participate in this important event to launch Phoenix History Month. On behalf of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, the home of the Akamer Autumn, or Pima, and the Halshadon Pipash, or Maricopa people, it is a pleasure to be here to be part of the shared history of the city of Phoenix. It goes without saying, the area we now call Phoenix, with its diverse population and its diverse landscape of the downtown high-rise buildings and residential communities and economic prosperity, was once a desert landscape that was home to a thriving indigenous people, the Hu'ugam, the ancestors of the Autumn people. We know the Hu'ugam thrived in this area and it was the Aboriginal territory since time immemorial. What do the words time immemorial mean? Dictionary.com particularly defines it as the time in the distant past beyond memory or record. Many native nations will use this phrase to accurately describe and reaffirm how long their existence has been in their homelands. The desert Southwest can be an extremely harsh environment, and to survive and prosper, our ancestors developed the effective way to grow crops for food and use in daily life. Water was essential for crops and people. Therefore, the people had to design and build effective canals and ditches to irrigate their fields for those vital food plants. And incidentally, the engineers actually, there's a story about how they made the water go uphill, but that's a story of a different time. The Autumn built and engineered an extremely complex but effective canal system to grow crops in great abundance to sustain the people as well as visitors. Through migration or seasonal moves, some of these canals and ditches became dormant. When Spanish and European explorers and settlers came into our territory, they revived these waterways to use for their purposes, using the fertile lands that were cultivated initially by the Autumn. As the U.S. government grew, laws were passed that would give title and ownership to these immigrants and lessen the use by the Autumn. Phoenix became a pass-through area as many more people ventured west to participate in the California gold rush of the 1800s. Many decided to stay and make our homelands their home. The Autumn have always considered Phoenix and the surrounding area as blessed, and it was provided to the people by our deities, placed upon it all of our needs for survival. We still believe this to this day. And as modern history tells us, in January of 1879, United States President Rutherford B. Hayes declared the reservation of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community to be greater than 600,000 square acres, or more than 300 square miles. The lands of the reservation at that time comprised most of the city of Phoenix and many cities in the Phoenix metropolitan area. However, after much consternation from the public, on June 14th of the same year, 1879, President Hayes signed an executive order that formally established our reservation to the size that it is today, at just over 51,000 square acres. The modern history also shows that our community continues to survive and to thrive, to become part of the fabric of the Phoenix metropolitan area. Our cultural ways and traditions stay with us, while we also contribute to the economic prosperity of the region. Where we can, we give back to the community at large and seek to be good neighbors with the cities that we share common borders with. In the same way, we work with our neighbors to ensure there is proper recognition and repatriation of our ancestors that are often found throughout the valley. And we thank you for that. Thank you. So in my view, the proclamation of the City of Phoenix today is yet one more positive step to acknowledge the common history we share, along with a renewed commitment to work together. Thank you for this time and attention today. And I will say, Sapo and Tawa'upamye, which in our language means we will see you again. There's never a goodbye. We will see you again. Ha'opo, Sapo.
I know all you historians like me, those last few words created shivers. So thank you so much. It was an absolute honor to have you here today. I appreciate that. Along those same lines, again, just going back to what I mentioned at the beginning, if you want to have a real inspirational experience that'll help you understand how important it is that we recognize both our Huhugam history as well as our Euro-American history. I drove in this morning down Washington, went right by Pueblo Grande, and that in itself is hallowed ground, just that spot, and it's a very inspirational spot. A lot of people don't know that if you continue down Washington, when you get to 24th Street, there is a historic marker placed there which honors the introduction of the Euro-Americans into the Phoenix Valley, and it designates an exact spot where there were some of those crops grown that I mentioned a little bit earlier. So when you're like me and you get inspired driving down Van Buren or Washington, take that experience and drive by Pueblo Grande and then a little bit further down and take a look at that marker. You will be inspired. Our next speaker is a homegrown entrepreneur who is a proud ASU graduate where he played baseball and also played baseball for the Los Angeles Dodgers system as well. The thing that stands out to me with Aaron that ties into what we're talking about today is he and his colleague Darcy Carter and their whole team are doing a magnificent job of reusing, renovating our iconic Union Station. So if you want to see what can be done with a little bit of motivation, some inspiration, a lot of hands and a lot of money, go look at Union Station, what Aaron has been able to accomplish. So with that, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Aaron Klusman, and he'll talk a little about his perspective.
Well, Steve, thank you. One, I think it's just great reflecting that as you're explaining a little bit why the month of March was chosen. I think it's when I was asked to speak on behalf of development community, private business community, it was interesting to choose this month given just coming off February, Super Bowl, Phoenix Open, Suns Kevin Durant, which I know is a touchy topic right now. Hope his ankle's okay. It's a good month for some humility. So when I think of the perspective of the business community, I think humility of just knowing, Phoenix coincidentally sits in the middle of a 300,000 acre fertile valley, 30 acres wide, 30 miles wide, 30 miles wide, long, 20 miles wide, and so much of what we benefit from now in this phase of our city's growth, I think, is just stuff that we don't control. And so I don't know, a little bit of a test. This is a little bit of a grade school test. Do you guys remember the 5 C's? Copper, cattle, citrus, climate, cotton. So much of, I think, at least for the business community, is History Month is a great month to reflect on what got us here. So much of what we benefit from is things we don't control, and which puts more onus on people like you, Steve, and Mayor Gallego, I think, to preserve historic storylines so that we can reflect on, we all stand on shoulders, business community, the growth's coming, so we have to protect it and steward it well. So I think this is just great. Steve, love what you're doing. Mayor Gallego, I think this is a great month, and appreciate you having me here. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Our next speaker, and I have to read this because my memory doesn't work quite as well as I would like it to at times, but our next speaker is an urban and digital historian at Arizona State University, where he directs the public history program. Along with students in his upper-level research seminars, Mark curates the Valley of the Sun as a living museum through the mobile app Salt River Stories. So if you want to get a snapshot of a lot of history of a lot of different places that is incredibly credible, look to Salt River Stories, and Mark is the author of that. So with that, I'll introduce Dr. Mark Thibault to say a few words. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Steve. But thank you, Mayor Gallego, for creating the MOO, the official historian's office, official historian in your office. I think that's a phenomenal step, and History Month is even better, right? I'm a historian, I'm a history geek, right? So that's what I'm going to just share some of my enthusiasm for why Phoenix History Month is important. So the very first thing is, we all know history is important, but it's important because it tells us about the fabric of our community. It defines us as citizens, right? It tells us who we are and who we want to be. So this month is really important just to reflect on that broadly. Now, of course, I love the past, its complexity, its contradiction, its nuance, and its debate. History is fundamentally about debate. Debate is a good thing, and we shouldn't be fearful of it, even if some folks want us to be afraid of the past. Students in my research seminars, they create and author Salt River Stories, and they learn history by becoming historians, by researching in archives, collecting oral histories, going out and exploring the landscape. And then, as public historians put history to work in the world. My students go out and do that, and the app is an expression of that. As they curate the history of Phoenix as this kind of living museum, they discover a bunch of things. One, Phoenix has a remarkable history. Our history dates back more than 1,000 years. It is the story of diverse peoples building community. As a social historian, that is really important to me. Native Americans, Mexican migrants, Anglo settlers, and African Americans seeking opportunity. Women demanding voting rights and then equal rights. Capitalists and politicians putting their mark on the landscape. Tourists and Americans training for war, coming and discovering the Sonoran Desert and staying. And then developers and ASU graduates, like Aaron, and farmers leaving their mark on the landscape in lots of subtle ways. It's a real dynamic story. Well, it turns out that the state and the city are at the heart of the western borderlands of the United States. Our stories here are not mere fringe stories in the nation, but they are central to America of the 21st century. So it's really important to study this history, and my students, both from near and far, we get locals now, but also students from California and elsewhere, they're shocked to discover that Phoenix has this kind of rich past. And part of it is our responsibility. We failed to emphasize it. And I'm hoping that Phoenix History Month moves us forward towards helping us to remedy that oversight. I'm also hopeful that our neighbors will take this opportunity to learn some history, visit a museum. We have phenomenal museums. Maybe have a history conversation on social media, or talk to a family member. A K-12 student could interview a grandparent. There are all these ways to engage our history and our social history. And as we learn more about Phoenix, it's important to recognize that there's still more to learn. There are way too many historical silences. And I hope that Phoenix History Month will help spark conversations that will end, discussions that will end those silences, that will bring more voices to light. And in the process of those dialogues, I hope we can fully appreciate our diverse communities, the kinds of communities that make Phoenix such an inviting place. So thank you, Mayor Gallego, for designating this Phoenix History Month.
Thank you all. I appreciate all those great words. I want to finish up with just a quick story, and this is just a personal experience that happened to me within the last week or so. As most researchers and historians do, we tend to pick a rabbit hole and then go way, way, way deep on it. And so I got on a roll with time capsules in the valley, and the first thing I found was that there are more of them that are missing and never found than there are ones that are opened when they're scheduled to be opened. But one of the things that I discovered, and you may know this and you may not, but right across Washington on the south side of the Calvin Good building right near the city council chambers is a time capsule with a plaque on it that was buried in 1970, which, if you know your history, that was the centennial year for the city of Phoenix. And Mayor John Driggs was the mayor at that time, and he collaborated with a lot of other officials in the city, and they put together a time capsule, and there's a lot of neat stuff in there, and they put it over there. Unfortunately, the opening date is not until 2070. So as I look around the room, and I can only speak for myself, but I won't be around to open that thing. And I did the math, Mayor Gallego, and if you get elected for 12 more terms, you'll still be mayor at that point. And so I won't be around to know what's in there and read what's in there or experience it. But being the researcher that I am, I found out one of the items in there happens to be a letter that is written from Mayor John Driggs at that point to the mayor of Phoenix in 2070. Okay? So again, I won't be able to see it firsthand, but I was able to find out what it says. And I'm going to read this verbatim just so you hear what Mayor John Driggs was writing to whomever may be the mayor of Phoenix in 2070. I hope you will have built upon our future as we built upon our past. May God bless our second century as he did the first. Now, I'm going to read it again just so it sinks in. I hope you will have built upon our future as we built upon our past. May God bless our second century as he did the first. Now, when I read that, one of the things that becomes very clear to me is Mayor Driggs had a very good sense of what he was doing as a steward of our history as a community. And he was sending a message to the mayor of Phoenix in 2070 to say, look back when you take that office and ask yourself, how have we done in safeguarding our history and taking good care of it in the ensuing years? And I can tell you, because I'm committed, and with Mayor Gallego's vision, guidance, and assistance, along with the assistance and the openness of 1.6 million residents, that mayor in 2070 will be able to look back with a great deal of pride that we have done the right thing. So thank you, everyone, for coming. Yes, sir.
Can I have a little bit of time?
You betcha. Go right ahead.
You know, I've read our land acknowledgement, which was done and proposed by Mayor Gallego at least 4 times, and I hope to do it more. But it was started by her. So, on behalf of the Salt River P. Maricopa and the community, I'd like to present this to you. That was actually given to me by the Miss Indian Arizona, and it was given to me with love and respect, and I pass that on to you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, more shivers.
If the speakers could come forward one more time.
If you'd like to come forward, just take a picture. Just kind of step in front of us. Just come on over.
The short is nice, so I guess I don't know.
down.
All good? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that was
Appreciate it.
good
Yeah,
work.
thank
Good
you,
work.
thank you.
Pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Honored.
Yes, definitely.